So here is the black stone, which is the original stone of the synagogue upon which Jesus entered. The white stone was built 400 years later on top because it was ruined. The original synagogue was ruined. And this is where the synagogue where Jesus came and taught and was welcomed in the town of Capernaum. Capernaum is kind of quite a ways from Nazareth, which was the town he was kicked out at, where he was told, the town he was kicked out at because he said, now everyone knew him, it was a small town, he said that he would come to rescue people out of the prophecy of Isaiah. And he came to rescue people from oppression. And here in this synagogue, Jesus comes to teach. And probably Shabbat. And now look, we're going to walk from the synagogue. Okay. Just imagine Jesus is done. He's going to walk because he was invited to Simon Peter's house right here to stay for the night. Hospitality is huge in that culture. Now at this point, they're acquaintances. Maybe Simon Peter or some of the family members attended the synagogue. Maybe they heard a rabbi was in town. This is Simon Peter's house. Now here is where Peter's mother-in-law, who is the caretaker of a home, was sick with fever. And Jesus takes her hand, rebukes the fever, and it leaves. He heals her in front of the family. I wonder what Peter was thinking. Whoa, this guy has some authority. He's just not like any other rabbi who keeps his distance from people. Peter was a rough guy. He probably had an anger problem, and that was more like rage. There may have been abuse going on, we don't know. But look at this. It's probably the next day, we don't know, the next week. Watch. The Sea of Galilee. This is all from Luke chapter 4 and 5. So Jesus is now in this town. Peter has the whole night, he does a graveyard shift of fishing, comes up with nothing. What a waste. So frustrating. They use nets for their fishing boat. And it's on this shore that Peter Jesus has a crowd of people now who are listening to him, and the crowds are starting to get big, maybe because there was healing as well. And they're pressing against him, and he has nowhere to go. And so he sees a boat on the shore because the night of fishing is done. So this is in the morning, and Jesus says, I need to get some space here. So he asks Peter, James, and John, the family fishing business. Remember, the house is right there. So we're talking 100 yards or less. Remember, a fisherman has a bunch of heavy fish nets. What do you think he wants to do? He wants to live by the sea, so he doesn't have to haul his stuff and keep watch over his boats. And Jesus gets in the boat, says, can you put out a little bit farther so I can talk? And voices echo over the water pretty well. And this is where Jesus says, have you caught anything? And Peter says, no. And Jesus says, hey, why don't you throw your nets back out again after they've already cleaned them and set them up for the day. And he does. Peter reluctantly does. And there's so much fish in this water that two boats are needed. They began to sink. Peter's overwhelmed with something greater in his presence. And he says, leave me. I'm a really bad guy. And Jesus says, don't be afraid of me. Why don't you follow me and you'll catch people? Why? Because Jesus already stated his mission. It was to come and rescue people from despair, a sense of unworthiness, the lies that we live that keep us stuck, not knowing who we are and whose we are. Peter began to say, okay,